This video is brought to you by
Productions. In partnership with
Full Spectrum Performance. We provide, we guide, we empower.
Hey everyone, it's Peter from Full Spectrum Performance, and today we're going to go over how to properly breathe during exercise. By the end of this video, you're going to know everything you need to know to be comfortable and confident on when to breathe during exercise, how you should be breathing, and a few exceptions where you might need to change it up. So let's get started. In order to understand when to breathe during our exercises, it's really important we know what our muscles are doing while we're executing these movements, which brings us to two terms that we need to understand before we move forward. Now, they're both muscle contractions, and the first type that we're going to focus on is an eccentric contraction, or the lengthening of your muscle to generate force. Now, you can more easily understand this as a push type of motion or movement. Now, we're going to focus on the hamstring first in a squat position, because this is really going to exemplify the point. Now from here you can see that your hamstring is going to look a lot like your bicep when you do a curl, in terms of that muscle is now going to be shortened. Now in order to generate force we need to stand up, and what's happening when we stand up is, again, these muscles are now going to lengthen in order to push you up, propel you forward. And again, we're looking at the hamstrings in this example. Now, the other contraction that we want to look at is a concentric contraction, or the shortening of your muscles to generate force. Now, again, you can think about this in the opposite terms, and understanding that instead of a push, we're now going to think of this like a pull. And similar to the hamstring, let's focus on the arm. So we're going to look at the bicep curl. Now, this will be the down position, so you can see the broom hand. How you can think about this bicep now is at that lengthened position, it's fully extended. Now what happens when you pull that weight up? Now you have the muscle needing to shorten itself for you to actually have that happen. So from here, you can think about the end position, and then now your bicep is curled. Now, the most important thing about these terms is really to understand when our body is doing work. Now, don't feel overwhelmed if this seems like a lot of information. We're going to break it down a lot more simply, just like this. Now, you don't need to memorize these two definitions, but the big takeaway should be to see both types of contractions as work, because this ties into the first cue and clue of when to breathe during our exercises. Now, we want to think work is anytime your muscles have to expend energy, because from this understanding we can think of it anytime you are exerting energy or a strenuous part of the exercise, the most difficult part of the movement, that is going to be when we exhale. So you can think of the little alliteration clue as exertion equals exhale, or anytime you are exerting energy you will be exhaling. Now, another clue to help remember this is going to be anytime you are fighting gravity, that is when you will be exerting the most force, and that's when you should breathe. Now, we're going to go over a few examples, but first I want to get this very clearly understood. There's a lot of science that's showing when you hold your breath, you are capable of lifting heavier or more weight. And this is exactly just for that, lifting. When you're doing calisthenic work, when you're doing regular everyday working out, you don't need to hold to this rule. Now, this is purely because these are for bodybuilders, power lifters. And for them, it's that strain and it's everything kind of contracting at once when you're pushing it up that's going to help you lift. Now, in terms of how most people breathe, a lot of people I find breathe in during this exertion phase, and this has actually been proven to be the least effective in terms of weight and in terms of proper execution of an exercise. So it's really important that you remember exhale upon exertion. Now, if you're doing heavy lifting, you would hold your breath throughout that big lift. But in terms of any type of core work or any type of calisthenic work, you're going to want to exhale upon exertion. And this really just has to do with our abs. Now, think about this. If you have that balloon of our stomach going out when we are inhaling, if you're trying to hold air within your lungs when you are trying to do a core exercise, you're not reaching that full potential of your muscles while you're exercising. Because again, the real purpose of exercise is to go from a max lengthening to a max contraction. And again, that time under tension. So if you're not able to actually, empty out your lungs and bring your core as tight as you can to its full contracted state, you're missing out on some of that room of tension. So again, to sum everything up in this, you always want to breathe out when you are exerting or fighting gravity, or it's the hard part of an exercise. And again, the opposite is when you are inhaling, it's going to be the easier part. Now, for a squat, the perfect example is when you are going with gravity, meaning when you're going down in your squat, that's when you should be inhaling. And when you are exerting force up or fighting against gravity, that's when you're going to breathe out. The same thing goes for your bench press or any type of pressing motion. Anytime gravity is with you, that's when you should be inhaling. And anytime you're pressing up, that's when you should be exhaling. Now, there's a few things that you can do to help with that. You can think about a audible yell or some type of, forced push where you're doing a sound like rip, rip, rip. You're not doing one of those, crazy ESPN world lifting competitions where you're yelling in the gym. There's no need to do that ever. So if you're doing that at the gym, please stop. You're wasting energy. The big clue here, though, is anytime you're going to be forcing your body to do new things like this, you're going to want to practice it. Do basic movements first. Try your curls, try a few pressing motions, try some squats, some lunges, and start to slowly practice that. Because if you've been living your whole life breathing in while you're at that max phase of exertion, it's going to be really uncomfortable and awkward at first. So you need to practice it. But trust me, your body will remember this quickly because it's natural. So again, the big clue here is going to be whenever you are fighting against gravity, that max exertion, or when your muscles are at that max point of work, that's when you want to be exhaling. And again, if you're doing heavy lifting, like powerlifting and bodybuilding, you're going to want to hold that breath. But really, it doesn't change much in terms of the movements themselves. You would be breathing in while you're going down, essentially with gravity. You'd be holding throughout the exertion and then exhaling at the end. But for those non-bodybuilders and I guess you could say power lifters, then please exhale upon exertion. There's no need to get a hernia. There's no need to get any type of weird lower back or core injury because you're breathing improperly. And finally, we'll cover how to breathe during our exercises. Now, we broke this down into 3 steps because it makes it a little bit easier in terms of remembering what to do. Now, the first one is very straightforward. For our in-breath and our inhale, we're going to be breathing in through our nose. And just like that as well, we're going to be exhaling or taking that out breath through our nose as well. Now, this is when things start to change. When we get into a point of recovery or we are no longer at our resting heart rate, we want to try to, again, breathe in through the nose as best you can, but here we're actually going to breathe out through the mouth. And I'm going to put a G here to be a little reminder that we want to breathe gently out through our mouth. We really want to try to keep it soft and controlled. Now, lastly, this is when the most different between all the phases is going to be our max heart rate, or when we are at that point where we are huffing and puffing. And as you can imagine, it's very difficult to breathe in through the nose. So you're going to want to breathe in through the mouth. We're going to do another G here for gently. Breathe in through the mouth softly, and then you're going to exhale through the mouth. Now here you may notice that it could be really heavy at first, but you want to try to bring that back down until it's at that point where it's a gradual or a gentle exhale. Now for both of these phases, you're going to want to see here that even at that high heart rate, you're essentially trying to work it back to this. And then again, just like the recovery phase, you're trying to work it back to that normal resting heart rate. Now, the biggest tip that I have for you in terms of really bringing that heart rate down and giving enough room in your chest and your torso for your lungs to actually expand is to always have your hands over your head and stand up tall, or sit up tall if you're sitting, while breathing. Now, it's going to be the exact same in terms of what you're doing, but here you're actually going to open up the chest cavity so your lungs can fully expand and fill with air. And believe me, it is a huge difference when you are doing this with your hands above your head, really opening up your chest full, versus trying to recover all bent and shrugged up. It just makes it really difficult to take those nice deep full breaths. Not to mention, your lungs aren't that big. I know in a lot of cartoons and depictions your lungs are seen as like half of your torso, but they're really more like your palm, or not your palm, but your full hand. And from here, obviously there's more volume and depth to them, but as you can see even here, they're not that big. So just a good reminder, again, when you are resting, anytime you're in these two phases down here, pop those arms up over your head, even have them up in the air, hold on to something if you feel like you can't even hold yourself up, to really open up that chest so you can get some nice breaths in. Now, it's been a lot of information, but again, practice makes perfect. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I've hoped it's helped. See you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, a share, but don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content from myself and Full Spectrum Performance. But most importantly, please leave a comment. Your input and insight is greatly appreciated and helps us create better content for you. If you haven't yet, be sure to check out our social media pages below because we post awesome content daily. Thank you for watching and have a great morning, evening, or night.
All right.